So this is the application homepage, which if after you've started up as we did in setup, will be located at localhost 8080. And again, if at any time you need to get back to the documentation, this is the link, okay? And the documentation has the link to the source repo. So this link here, which you'll see throughout this demonstration, is your reference if you need to get back to the doc again. So Lab 2 has a scenario where the user provides a question. The question is inserted into the database using JSON duality feature, okay? And then a JavaScript call is made from the database to get the answer from OpenAI, okay? And it's a little unique what I'm doing here because I'm actually having the database call our application, and our application calls OpenAI. So, obviously you can call any, different URLs you want from the JavaScript. I've just done it this way, so it's kind of a self-contained environment we have. And then the answer is then inserted into the same table using JSON. And then the reply is returned to the user, and then you can also query this in the database. So what's nice about this is that you're making the calls from the database so you can store the information in the database and analyze it later, instead of having it where the application is on a mid-tier, it's doing calls, then storing it in the database, then analyzing it, that type of thing. There are a lot of different combinations here, but that is one very nice aspect of this. If your database is calling and you want to store that for further, as I say, any kind of further analytics or using the Oracle machine learning in the database, making these calls from the database and storing it directly there, it's in one spot. It's very nice. So let's just take a quick look at that application real quick. And so what we'll do is give it a unique conversation name. So just call this conversation name 9, and then ask some question. I've asked this before. Why is the sky blue? Okay. Then we see it's received the question. And now it's making a call to the store procedure. The store procedure is calling back up to OpenAI to get the response, which we then see, okay? And this is an answer from OpenAI. So let's look at the source a little closer. What I've done here is used one Java class for each of the use cases in our application, okay? And so there's some redundant code, but I thought it would be nice to break it down that way. You can, have a self-contained Java class for each of these use cases and take what you like. And I've deliberately, as you can see, I'm using raw HTML here. I've deliberately made the code very, succinct, very minimal. So this is the call AI from Oracle database, use JSON and SQL application use case we're looking at here. And so that form is calling into this conversation endpoint. And that conversation endpoint is simply taking that dialogue, creating a conversation object. And so that's what you can see here, is this conversation has in it a list of nested interlocutors. And so each of those has a dialogue, okay? And so we have a relationship here, and it's the most simple relationship you can think of, but it can be analyzed both with SQL and with JSON, okay? And that's the point here, is to show some kind of relationship. And then we can use, as I say, SQL to do all the CRUD operations as well as JSON, and back and forth. So you have this duality. So what we're doing is inserting using JSON. So we've created this object. We have a conversation with two participants. And we go ahead and write that value. And this is how we do it with JDBC. We're using this Oracle type JSON for efficiency. I won't go into it, but that provides a number of different efficiencies. But we're working with JSON here and inserting that in the database, okay? The next thing that happens is that we execute this OpenAI store procedure. And you can see this doesn't take any arguments. So this could also be, an example of using for batch processing. So this OpenAI call store procedure is in the one we installed earlier. And what it's doing is using JavaScript, as I mentioned, and it's selecting the conversations from that JSON document, and it's doing it in SQL. Okay. And it's selecting where the dialogue is null, because what we inserted was the dialogue, which is the question from me, but there's no answer yet. So there's no dialogue back from OpenAI. Okay. And so the logic here is that we're searching for dialogue that is null. We're then making a call out to our service, which in turn is making a call, this database get reply service back here is making a call to GPT 3.5 to get an answer, okay? And so then it's returning that, and the store procedure is updating it to set the dialogue to that return, okay? And then our application then returns it to the user, of course. And that's what we see on the screen over here, okay? And so again, that's a little odd that I'm calling from the database back into our application, but as I say, there are a number of different use cases that would be good for batch jobs. And you may even want that communication back to the database. It's sort of a notification mechanism from the database to the application that, some processing has been done there. And so, you could have your application waiting on notifications rather than blocking and things like that. So a number of different combinations as far as those models, and as far as using JavaScript in the database, and as far as using JSON and SQL together. Okay, so you can see a lot of potential there.